America, this is the Business Pulse, brought to you by the Freedom Chamber, freedomchamber.net. Online, find us, and we are the Pro-American Business Network. Always a pleasure to be joined by Rod Martin and Dean Owen. Gentlemen, welcome into the program.
Thank you for having us.
Some of us are close to international waters. Dean, explain to the group where you're at right now, because this is why I love technology.
I'm on a cruise ship just outside of Sitka, Alaska, and just kind of makeshift. You know, we're small business owners. We adapt, we adjust. When the situation changes, we change and make things happen. And of course, I love doing this show, so we just figured out a way to get it done on the cruise ship. So,
have you waved to Putin? Have you seen Putin? Is he waving back to you?
No, once he found out I was coming in town, he took off.
Understood. That's going to be my first topic of discussion. And Rod, I want your insight on this, and Dean, your insight. Trump met with Putin. Trump met with Zelensky. Anything going to come out of it? And what does it mean for the world and business as we move forward? And is NATO getting restructured? I read the Martin report today.
Absolutely is. And everybody should do that, by the way, at rodmartin.org. Truth is, we're closer to peace than we've been in 3.5 years of war. And the president is the reason why. First and foremost, because he actually finally whipped NATO into shape. They've been resisting that literally since the end of the Cold War. Now we're talking about, and the commitments have been made to triple alliance defenses, with, of course, the biggest bulk of that coming out of Europe, which has been freeloading for decades. I mean, the United States is one ally of 32. We pay 70.5% of the cost of defending NATO. NATO spends 29.5, the other 31 nations. That's not a partnership. That's teenagers in our basement. And Trump has made them go get a job. So you've got a real alliance with real teeth for the first time since the fall of the Soviet Union. And that puts him in a position to go and say to Putin, look, we can make a peace that makes sense for everybody. Everybody's going to lose something they wanted, but we can get there. And by the way, if you don't, we're going to slap 100 to 500% tariffs on all of your customers, and you're not going to have any money to continue this war. And that's exactly what he did. You will note, Putin came to Alaska immediately after Trump slapped the tariffs on India for its Russian oil purchases. That was the stick. And then he goes to Anchorage and he says, look, you know, we can make a peace, and the peace can include American investment into Russia, and the peace can include this and that and the other. All true. But what is certain is, and you saw it this week with the president at his desk in the Oval Office and the entire leadership of Europe sitting in front of him like they're in the principal's office, there's no question who the leader of the free world is, and he isn't taking guff off anybody.
You know, and I want to just chime in real quick, Rod, on something you said, because I was scrolling through social media and up pulled a interview that Oprah did with Trump back in, I don't remember, 30 years ago, whenever it was. And he has not changed his tune. He talked exactly what you just talked about, NATO not pulling their weight, America being taken advantage of. So this is not something that Trump is just going with the wind. This is something he's been steadfast in for decades. And now it's all coming into real life in real time. And you're right, they did look like kids in the principal's office. It was just amazing to see.
Because we need to hear what Dean has to say about this,
yes,
for heaven's sake. But just briefly, yes, Trump has been saying the same thing since I was a teenager in the 80s. Trump wrote a ton about this in best-selling books all through the last several decades. It just never ceases to floor me how his critics don't do the homework, don't do the reading, don't pay attention to what he's been saying all these years, and above all, don't pay attention to what he has taught the public about negotiating in, again, 12 best-selling books, 13 seasons of The Apprentice. He's been telling you what he'd do, and now he's doing it, and it's happening, and they're all shocked. I just marvel.
Yeah, to me, it seems we have a saying in the financial services world that history doesn't repeat itself perfectly, but it sure does rhyme. And if you go back and you look at stuff from Ronald Reagan in the 1960s, he was saying then the exact same thing he was saying on the campaign trail in 1979. It's staggering how the similarities are there. And it is so incredibly simple. Trump is the easiest guy in the room to read. And, we'll go back to what he's talking about with peace. He's not talking about just peace. He's talking about in terms of how many human lives are dying every week. And he's talking about the human tragedy of massive catastrophic deaths from war. And he's as human as you can be. He's not just a president. He is a president. He gets all the respect in the world. But as a human being, he cares about people. He cares about lives. And that's what he's talking about. Be it in Washington, D.C., with bringing in the National Guard, being it in California with ICE raids, it's all got the same theme to it. It's all the same underscore. He's worried about how does he protect human life and how does he, further mankind and stop the wars, stop the killings. And he does it with commerce. He does it with nations' economies. And he doesn't do it with bombs. He doesn't do it with guns. He doesn't do it with weapons of mass destruction. His weapons of mass destruction are tariffs and economic policies. And how in the world does anyone oppose that is beyond me. But of course, here we are. We do have a spiritual war going on in America. And so whatever the good does, the evil's going to try to oppose. And I believe that's exactly what's happening. So Putin looked like a very small person next to Trump. Of course, President Trump is a very towering individual. I've met him. He's bigger than life in real life. The flyovers sent a very definite picture. There was a cartoon that says, "Do you see those big planes up there?" And then he says, "Your radars don't."
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's the state of the world right now. And Rod, you hit the nail on the head. You have a leader of the free world now. And you saw exactly how the leaders of the EU and everybody are reacting to when he says to do something, they're now getting in line and doing it. And I think you're going to see, as you've said, the golden age, prosperity and just flourishing like we've never seen before. And the big, beautiful bill really hasn't really kicked in yet. There's a lot of things that are still on the sidelines that haven't really come into play yet. So I welcome your thoughts on what the next steps are, because it seemed like right after Zelensky left the White House, Putin decided to unleash some hell back into Ukraine.
Well, they're going to keep fighting. I mean, that's the whole point. We're gonna work for a peace deal. We're not just going to do a ceasefire. And why don't you want to do a ceasefire? Well, honestly, I don't know what Trump and Putin said in the room. Trump certainly went in there talking about a ceasefire. But when was the last time you saw a ceasefire that held? And then people are just carping back and forth. No, we need a full and final settlement, and something happened in Anchorage to convince Donald Trump that we might be able to get to an actual, full, complete peace treaty in a matter of a week or two. I don't doubt that that's possible. We know what both sides have to have. The only question is, how threatened does Vladimir Putin feel by the loss of revenues from oil sales to his key customers? And it doesn't have to be everybody. If we smack China around with 500% tariffs or something, it is catastrophic for China over some period of time. But you don't have to do that to get to Russia. Russia loses some significant percentage of its oil revenue, and they can't keep the tanks rolling. So Trump has him in a bad position, and he's given it an opportunity where he wins. He wins, he saves face, lots of good things happen. And we also secure Ukraine, and we also give it the security guarantees it has to have. It's the kind of win-win that we've always seen Trump try to achieve.
Right. And we're in a space where we know how this is going to end. We know this is going to end with a brokered peace treaty. We don't know all the details yet. We're not there yet. But it's one of those things, Larry Winget, who calls himself the world's first irritational speaker, talks about, is we don't move until we have enough pain. So if you're sitting in your chair long enough, your butt will hurt a little bit, and then you'll wiggle your butt. So when it hurts enough, you'll move. So where is Putin's line where he hurts enough? We have got catastrophic economic weapons that this president can unleash, and he has it. He's slowly unleashing them one after another until he gets to that point where Putin feels pain enough. Where is that line? We're not 100% sure, but there is a line. We know what happens when we cross it. Putin will shift, and there will be peace. Now, does that take weeks? Does that take months? Does it take days? We don't know that yet. It's along the same lines with Putin as what's going on with this one big, beautiful bill. Talking with the folks at Job Creators Network network last week and then talking, I was on stage with Mike Sunday night. And the big thing I did not have a full appreciation of was just how effective the left's messaging had been, that the one big beautiful bill, how good it is for America and how good it is for working families, and how much of an effort there needs to be to push out that tax cuts work. Tax reductions benefit everyone. And so there's been a lot of bad information. So for our listeners, I want to hit this really, really hard. This bill is really good for America. It's really good for you. It's good for your family. It is not a get rich for the wealthy program. Matter of fact, the wealthy are the ones least advantaged by this bill. The lower middle class are entirely advantaged in beautiful, beautiful ways by this bill. Recent report from Tax Foundation, which is completely nonpartisan, they're private, they're not in the political space at all, said it's about $3,750 per year in a middle-class family's budget. Now, for a lot of families, that's a 5% increase in their take-home pay. That's a big number. And, we're incentivizing people to come back in the workforce. We just had we're going to have Andrew on here in a little bit talking about how hard it is to find workers and the difficulties we're having with the job market. So there's lots of incentives to bring people into the workforce, and the workers that we need, the lower income typically, that are on tips, that are on overtime. Lots of great stuff there. Manufacturing, with being able to completely write off everything. What that does for me as a CPA when I'm sitting down with my client is I can manipulate that depreciation in so many different ways. I can target the outcome numbers I want, so we pay the amount of tax we want today and not anymore, which gives more money for capital investment. We talk about we're in this period where it hasn't happened yet. And somebody was screaming bloody murder that Trump did not fully get Social Security tax free. And we don't have the votes to do that today. But I likened it and said, okay, if I told you I was going to give you $10,000 over the course of the next 4 years, and 6 months into it, I'd given you 9, would you call that a bad thing? No, of course not. We haven't gotten to completely tax-free Social Security yet. But my God, we got 90% of the way in 6 months. It was promised over 4 years. How do you complain about that? We're just not there yet. And I've noticed it's a very political trick of the left. Whenever we start moving somewhere, Donald Trump starts moving somewhere, they're always screaming, he hasn't finished. Well, no, you got to go through a process. And this president's moving faster than the speed of light with stuff. And they're still screaming, he's just not there yet. He's not there yet. He's not there yet. Well, how is that a problem? So
absolutely, but where we are, Dean, where we are yet is right up to the hard break here. So you hang tight. I know you're on an Alaskan cruise with Mike Gallagher. Rod and I are very jealous about that. We are going to bring on Andrew Krapachetz from Red Balloon. We're going to talk about the labor market and what the big beautiful bill and the impact that has, and we can discuss the crack in the labor market, which you and Rod talked about last week, I believe. So hang tight, everybody. Dean, hang tight there in Alaska. Rod, hang tight in Florida. I'll hang tight here in Illinois, and then we're going to go to Idaho and grab Andrew. So hang on real quick, everybody. This is the Business Pulse.
Hey, the Freedom Chamber is amazing. I'm so glad that we get to be here on the Freedom Chamber's Business Pulse. This is an organization you should support. It's an organization of which you should be a member. The Freedom Chamber is getting important things done in this country. And honestly, we need spaces for people who believe the sorts of things that if you're watching this, you probably do. We have gone through this extended period of not just canceling individuals, but just boycotting businesses and doing terrible things, debanking. Nigel Farage, who is likely to be the next prime minister of the United Kingdom, was actually debanked by all the major banks in the United Kingdom. And of course that happens here, and we get de-insured and all these terrible things. The Freedom Chamber is fighting for you. The Freedom Chamber is here to make sure that you're protected, that your values matter, they count, and they're in the public square. So I encourage everybody to join the Freedom Chamber.
America, welcome back into the Business Pulse. I'm Chuck Barham. We're brought to you by the Freedom Chamber, the pro-American business network, online at freedomchamber.net. It's Rod Martin, it's Dean Owen, and welcome to the chat, Andrew Krapachetz from Red Balloon. Andrew, welcome in, bud.
Thanks for having me. Always nice to chat with you.
Well, we've got a good think tank here of people that want to know how the labor market's doing, and you're on the front lines of it. And tell us what you're seeing, how AI is affecting it, and your new acquisition that Red Balloon just acquired. We want to hear all about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the labor market's kind of weird right now. And we obviously saw the BLS director getting fired by President Trump, which I actually think was a good thing because the amount of job revisions or the revisions of the job number that we've seen, they were so overwhelming that if you had an accountant bringing those kind of revisions from previous months to you, talking about your financial performance, you would have fired that accountant a very long time ago. And so hopefully we're going to start to get less politicized and more accurate numbers out of the BLS. But what's actually kind of the interesting thing that's happening in the labor market right now is there's actually an AI war going on when it comes to job placement. And let me explain that a little bit. Basically, job seekers are now using AI Apply, and you can go check that out, AI Apply. I think it's aiapply.com, or they're using Robo Apply. And basically, they put in their resume, they put in a little information about themselves, and they pay this service to go out and apply to hundreds of jobs every single day. So they can sit on their couch and watch Netflix and be applying to jobs all over the internet. In fact, we were talking to an employer who said he had someone show up for an interview and their first question was, "Who are you and what business are you?" And he's like, "What do you mean you applied to the job?" He's like, "No, I didn't apply. My AI agent applied." And of course, that employer hung up pretty quickly because they had no desire to interview someone who had no desire to actually work for their business. They were instead just focused on trying to AI apply their way to a high paying job. And so what are employers doing? Well, they have to respond with applicant tracking systems, ATSs, that have pretty sophisticated AI systems and algorithms to basically weed people out. Unfortunately, a lot of those AI systems have been trained by liberal computer programmers. And a lot of the ATSs are kind of this HR tech world, which is pretty woke, and they are screening out, I'll just say, white males because we're the worst. And they really don't want those people to actually show up and get a job. And I was talking to a job seeker who said, I applied to a job at 6 p.m. and by 2 a.m. I got my automated rejection letter. And he's like, and I'm pretty sure the HR department was not pulling all-nighters trying to reject people, but instead the algorithms were rejecting that person because they didn't check all the boxes. They didn't have the right demographics that the algorithm thought the employer should be hiring. Well, this is very dangerous for employers because not only is that automated discrimination, it's also going to weed out the people that you actually want. And so this war in AI between automated job posting or job applicants and automatic rejection by the employers is leaving a lot of people kind of in the lurch right now. If you're a real job seeker who's really applying to a job, you might never see the light of day. You may never have a human actually look at your application. So one of the things Red Balloon's doing is we are using AI and algorithms, but we're also understanding that hiring is a distinctly human activity. You have to look people in the eyes. You have to understand work ethic and culture. Are they going to be a fit for my business? And you should be using computers and AI to bring efficiency and effectiveness to humans, but not give the AI all the decision-making power when it comes to hiring. So Red Balloon's built some really cool tech, which I won't go into too much, but it allows people to kind of fight through the AI war noise and actually be noticed by employers and actually have employers talk to real people. And what's cool about that is we actually acquired militaryhire.com last month because veterans actually struggle with that the most because a lot of the skill sets and capacity that they have achieved while they're giving service to the U.S. military and protecting all of us don't match up well with what the ATSs at these private businesses are looking for. Therefore, those military vets who are trying to enter the private sector are auto-rejected very, very quickly because their skill sets don't match up well. But their skill sets do match up well, but the key words don't match up well. So we want to be able to come alongside and use some of this really cool tech that we have built to be able to come alongside our vets at scale and be able to help them find jobs where they can find meaningful employment and be able to kind of fight through this AI algorithm keyword noise and actually be understood as a real person. I'll give you an example of one of the things that we did on this front. We had a candidate who applied to a job at General Dynamics. General Dynamics is this huge business. And she was rejected almost immediately coming out of the Army because her keywords didn't line up with the keywords of the job description. But one of the things that we're doing with Red Balloon and military hires, we have these virtual hiring events where we'll have thousands of veterans show up for a 3-hour block, and they'll actually be able to meet the real recruiters at the real businesses and have a real conversation like a human being. Well, it turns out this vet who had been rejected by General Dynamics went ahead and went to the virtual booth for General Dynamics for military hire, actually met the recruiter who was trying to fill that job. And turns out she was a perfect fit for that because her attitude, her work ethic, her drive, her desire was exactly what they were looking for. Anyway, long story boring. She now works at General Dynamics and is earning more than she thought she would be able to because she could be treated as a real human being and instead use the technology to facilitate that conversation, but not replace that conversation. So there you go. That's what's cooking in the red balloon world, easy for me to say. And that's what's happening in kind of this job market world where AI is starting to take everyone's experience, their joy, and the whole process of finding a job.
Well, I think it's just one more illustration of the fact that AI is a tool. It's not a super intelligence. It's not a replacement for humanity. It can absolutely increase productivity, but if humans aren't operating it, it just turns into a train wreck. And we're seeing that across the board. Anybody who has dealt with ChatGPT 5 knows exactly what I'm talking about. All the promised gains that we've been hearing about for a year or two, they just really aren't there. It is a better model. It does some things better, but this is not going to take over the world like some artificial god. That's just not what's happening. These are tools. They're going to greatly increase human productivity, but what they're going to increase is human productivity. And
right.
that is getting lost in a lot of the conversation, which, by the way, is entirely political in nature, trying to establish universal basic income and basically put everybody in the world on welfare. There's no need for that. There is going to be some adjustment, but that's just another socialist boondoggle avoiding the reality of the situation.
Well, and what's interesting, Rod, is as I'm talking to businesses and, with our acquisition of military hire, we're now working with larger businesses like General Dynamics and being able to help them. And when I talk to these HR professionals in these businesses who I probably don't line up on with worldview very much, many of them are not part of the Freedom Chamber, maybe someday. But when I say, look, AI is taking away, if we're just using the algorithms to decide who you're actually going to see and who you're going to talk to and having AI make those decisions, and we want to stop that AI war and actually get humans back to talking to humans, they just light up. They're like, oh my word, yes. I think the AI fatigue is a real thing right now. Everyone feels like I've been told that it's going to do everything for me, but at the end of the day, intuition, work ethic, culture, drive, desire, those things are just not going to be quantified or captured by AI. And I think you're going to see businesses, if they rely entirely on AI, particularly in the hiring space, they're going to make some massive decisions that are going to destroy their business, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because you need humans to make decisions about human hiring.
Let's see if Dean is out of fire alarm hell. Dean, are you with us? We
Yeah.
good?
I'm back. Yeah, I'm back. One of the things I'd like to, Andrew, to speak to a little bit, for education and help our audience know and understand, but also for validation, is what's going on with the labor market. This is an outfit that understands the labor market. They're deep in the labor market. They're not politicized. They're trying to put out accurate information for what they're really seeing. And yes, we know that every government agency has been politicized, from the DOJ, the CDC, CIA, the CBO, and I would say the BLS. So, Andrew, can you speak to that a little bit and share with us what your thoughts are? And because the reason why is probably a month and 6 weeks ago, Rod and I were on and we talked about how the job market had cracked, not broken, but cracked. And then we were going through some transitions and some validation on that. And again, not to pull our chain and say, look at us and beat our chest and say we were right, but to verify and validate that, say, yes, the Freedom Chamber is a place you get real, accurate information. Forget all that government garbage you get. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw the BLS number come out with 74,000 jobs for July, but then we saw massive revisions for the previous 2 months, which I mentioned earlier, down to like 35,000 per month for the previous 2 months. And I think what it just told everyone is you really can't trust the BLS. You can't trust the numbers that we've been getting for the last, honestly, 4+ years. We have no idea what was actually happening with the labor market. It became a political organization. The BLS used to be kind of immune from that politicization. And unfortunately, we're now in a world where you can't really trust those numbers. I like to look at the ADP numbers more because they're private business. Now, they're private business. Do they still have motivations? Absolutely. Are there still concerns there? Yes. But they're focused on private sector payroll. And because they process almost 30% of private sector payroll in the US, they have a better pulse on that even than the BLS. Remember, the BLS, I think their systems and their process are antiquated. And even if it wasn't politicized, I think it is incompetent to actually quantify what's happening in this very dynamic labor market right now. So if you look at those ADP numbers, economists thought there'd be 110,000 jobs in July. ADP said there were 104 private sector jobs in July. And the only thing that I'm actually excited about coming out of the BLS numbers is the decrease in federal jobs. Basically, since Trump's taken office, they're reporting, and again, that's where you put the asterisk, they're reporting 84,000 fewer jobs in the federal space. Well, labor markets don't move on a dime. Generally, they're a big barge. It's a lot of people. It takes a minute for someone who gets fired. Maybe they have a 2-week process to leave the business. It takes them time to find a new job. So it doesn't just happen in a day. People finding jobs, finding work, being productive at work, that takes a minute. So don't get too obsessed about last week's numbers or today's numbers. But I see all of those federal workers entering the private sector. We've been hearing from our small businesses at Red Balloon for a long time that they are competing with the federal government for talent with their dollars. In other words, they're spending tax dollars so the federal government can hire talent that the private sector now doesn't have access to. And so they end up going to illegal immigrants or somewhere else to try and find the labor that they need. Well, those 84,000 or whatever the number actually is, actually being released back onto the labor market where we're not paying taxes to pay for them and we have access to actually hire them, that is going to have a positive impact because people are producers. They're not just consumers. And if they can be out doing productive things, working for private sector, that's going to have a long-term impact. The labor market's weird though right now. If you have not had a job for 6 months, you're going to have a hard time finding a job. Whereas some employers are still hiring. We do a Freedom Economy Index. We do that every several months with Public Square. We ask a lot of our businesses. And we're seeing a shift where these small to medium-sized businesses, generally under 500 employees, are starting to hire more. They're starting to think about growth, but they're not jumping all in. They're still very concerned. Many of them blew through all of their savings. They had to get investment. They had to get debt to be able to survive the Biden administration. But they're starting to see some good signs in the labor market and the economy, but they're still cautiously optimistic. I agree with your assessment that the labor market is cracked, that it is not broken, but it is a concern. And if you've been out of work for a long time and you are, let's just be honest, a white male who is over 40 years old, you're in a tough spot. And hopefully that's going to change as we remove a lot of illegal immigrants and the labor market will change, but it's weird right now.
Andrew, you are a fountain of information and intel, and we appreciate it. Where can people find you and get in touch with you, Andrew?
Yep, you go to redballoon.work, not .com, redballoon.work, because we think that work is a good thing, and com sounded too much like communism, although now I've bought militaryhire.com, so I don't know what I'm going to do with that. But redballoon.work, and then you can follow me on LinkedIn. And obviously, I love the Freedom Chamber, and we love being part of it, so thank you for having me.
Absolutely, Andrew. Thank you. Rod, where can people find you at?
rodmartin.org, and everybody should. We're up to about 275,000 followers on X. You can click over to there from the top left-hand corner of rodmartin.org, where we publish geopolitical analysis every single day.
Excellent. I feel like we're going to have a relationship start here between Andrew and Rod and Dean. This is why I love doing this show. Dean Owen, you're on a big cruise with Mike Gallagher in Alaska right now. Besides having fun, where can people find you at, Dean?
OwenCPA.com, real easy. Jump online, start a conversation. And I want to echo what Rod had said about why people need to get on our newsletters. He put out some geopolitical analysis about Christianity and the economy and how communism and versus socialism versus free market works. Sunday, that was just absolutely amazing. Really good stuff. His
Thanks.
broad stuff is amazing, and everyone, you need to look at that. You can find a lot of light and clarity in a very dark world if you're just listening to the right people. And Rod's doing a good job with that, and we try to as well. So jump on our newsletters and let's stay connected. And the newsletters are very much informative. We're not trying to sell anything. We're trying to be public servants.
Amen to that. And we appreciate you all being part of the Freedom Chamber. Find us online at freedomchamber.net, the Pro-American Business Network. And this has been the Business Pulse.
My name is Dean Owen. I'm a CPA. I have a master's degree in taxation and a personal financial specialist. Tax laws are always changing. That's why you need a tax strategist, not just a tax preparer. You need someone to help you pay the least amount of tax legally. Because if your business and retirement tax planning is not tax smart, it's probably tax dumb. Let's fix that today. Call me. Let's disinherit the government and not your kids. That's what my team and I do. This is who we are. I'm a combat veteran, unapologetically American, unapologetically pro-God, pro-life, and pro-Second Amendment. If those are the values you seek in a tax and money advisor, call us. Again, let's disinherit the government and not your kids. We're not afraid to share our values, and we share them with you.